Welcome. Welcome to Coast AM. I am Lisa Garr, and it is such a true experience to be with you here this evening. I have been absent for a little while because I went through quite the accident, and when I say happy to be here, I am fully happy to be here with our wonderful Coast to Coast family again. And I'll talk a little bit about my story later on, but tonight we're going to have a woman on who has quite a phenomenal story herself, Christy Whitman. She has been an amazing transformational leader long time, but she went from this great business model that she had where she was really the go-to person when we were talking about how to market your business to receiving messages. And she now transitioned her entire career and risked so much with her career and her family to undeniably listen to these messages from the ascended masters known as the Quantum Council of Light. And now Christy has been a guide and a voice for this Council of Light that have helped so many people change their lives. And so I want to talk with Christy about her story, about what it really means to risk everything for what you truly, truly believe in authentically. And then she's going to bring in communication from the council later on in the show and share that information with you and with us. So join me for the journey tonight. It's truly, truly something I will never take for granted is being here with you. I'll be right back. I'm Lisa Garr. You're listening to Coast AM. Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm Lisa Garr, and it's such a great joy to be with you tonight. So Christy Whitman is joining me. She has been an incredible transformational leader and was really at the top of her game when she was successful in her business and has a wonderful family. And I love Christy and her energy. But then these messages started coming through, the messages from the Ascended Masters identifying themselves as the Quantum Council of Light. And they came through so strong and for so long, she couldn't deny them any longer. And now this is all she does, is she brings these messages to people and has not only changed her own life, but many, many other people's lives through the teachings of this quantum energy mastery, which she has taught for many years, and also is a wonderful friend. Christy, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Hi, Lisa. So nice to be with you.
You too. So, yes, we met at a conference and a part of an organization that we were in together. And when I met you, you had best-selling books. You were a New York Times best-selling author. Tell me what Christy was doing then, and how and when did you start hearing these voices, these messages?
Well, it's interesting because I was a coach. I was a coach. I was the coach's coach. I certified and trained, over 3,000 law of attraction coaches.
Wow.
With my Quantum Success Coaching Academy. And so that was mainly what I was doing is I was, helping other people build their coaching businesses and, writing books and doing what normal coaches
right.
do, And but what's interesting is that I've always had messages come to me because my first book, Perfect Pictures, came to me. The image came to me in a meditation, and then when I went to bed that night at 1:05 in the morning, I was receiving this voice that was definitely not my own consciousness, sharing information, and I had to get up, and I went into my office, and I took pen to paper because what I was hearing was actually really profound, and so I started writing, and then my hand started doing automatic writing. I mean, it was just that my hands started moving without me thinking about what to write, and it would go and go and go and go. And so that's actually how I started becoming a coach, because I actually became an author first. So 7 days in a row, I had these downloads. I could hear this, this voice, and I then started just doing this automatic writing and got the book published. And as I was, talking to people through like spiritual bookstores and New Thought churches, people would ask me to coach them. And again, this is 20 3 years ago, but this is well before the internet. I mean, and it was funny because the first person in a workshop that said, well, can you coach me? I was thinking like a football coach, a cheerleading coach. Like I had to frame
What
of
does coach
reference.
mean?
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
and when she said this to me, no, like a life coach. I'm like, that's a thing, right? And I was just like, no, call me on the phone. So I had several people that wanted to take phone appointments, and I would just teach them about law of attraction and about energy. And I loved doing it. I loved the process. And then they would call me back or email me back going, oh my God, I met him, or I got a promotion, or, I lost the weight, or whatever it was. And I just loved it so much that I just started leaning in to coaching. And believe it or not, I was a pharmaceutical rep at the time.
Wow.
And so I know. And
Wow.
at corporate America, and I've been in corporate America for like 15 years, and people on my team started asking me, like, what are you doing? Because I was applying everything that I knew into my, pharmaceutical territory. And so we would get into team meetings, and people would be like, just give the awards to Christy, because I was like, we had 4 medications that we were selling, and I was the top salesperson. And, and so people on my team were like, can you coach me? And so I started, my first coach was someone, first paid client was someone that was on my team. And I helped her go from one of the least, like the lowest ranks in the company, like 420, up to winning, getting in the top 15% of the company. And she won like President's Trophy Award and all this kind of stuff. So I just loved the process. And so I got certified and, was doing my own thing. And as you know, I met Frederick, my husband, who lived in Montreal. And I quit my my day job, if you will. I quit my corporate America, and I started my full-time business. It'll actually be 17 years now, and just was coaching. And as all this started happening, people started asking me to certify them to do what I do. And that's when, the whole download of the Quantum Success Coaching Academy came through. And in 2008, that's what I did. I certified coaches up until it was 2018, and I started hearing messages to start a very intimate healing circle called Sacred Circle of Light. Actually, it was amazing. I was driving on the freeway, and all of a sudden, it was the first time I had a visual of the council, and I was hearing them. I was, clearly hearing the messages, and I had to pull over off the freeway because I was getting this, like, tremendous sight. It was almost like a ring of light with light beings. And I pulled over, and they were very clear. Start Sacred Circle of Light. And I'm like, sounds fantastic. What is that?
Wait, on the freeway, that they really could have chosen a better place.
Right?
Hiking, walking.
Yeah, I know, right? I always say it's never convenient, because I've been in the middle of like a cruise ship at 3:00 in the morning where they're like, grab a pen, grab your journal. And then, my book Quantum Success came through in the middle of the cruise ship, 3:00 in the morning, and I had to go in the bathroom because there was no place to go.
Right.
And I'm sitting on stacked towels, on a very cold linoleum floor.
There's Mom again. She's on the floor channeling.
Right. Pretty much. Yeah, so I started Sacred Circle of Light. I had some clients that wanted to go deeper, and they would come, and join like the Zoom call. And one day, and I'll never forget, Lisa, because it was my son's birthday at the same time too. So it was Max, and my youngest. It was September 17th, 2018. And all of a sudden, the last person that was going, was doing healing work and on her. All of a sudden, instead of hearing this very clear one voice, I was hearing like what felt like multiple, like 12, 15. And I couldn't make it out. And all of a sudden, my consciousness went out, but I could hear them. But I swear it's almost like my body flung over the side of my chair, and I was kind of just listening. But it was amazing. Thank goodness it was recorded. I was sitting up straight, my cadence of my voice changed, the inflection of my voice, I mean, mannerisms, everything changed. And I could hear them speaking, and what they said was really profound. And then when I came back in, I was like, what just happened? And all the women that were there, all the clients that were there were just like, oh my God, they were all crying. And ever since then,
Wow.
I could access them in that way, and it's just built over time. So it's been well over 5 years now. And in 2019, at the beginning of the year, the council said, okay, basically, you're going to pivot everything that you're doing.
Hmm.
And it was, it was a huge leap of faith, because most people knew me again as Christy the coach. And, for me to then be a channeler, to be a messenger, a lot of people, quite a few people were like, okay, this is too weird. So I lost
Yes.
some of my fan base, if you will, and gained others.
Right.
So it was a huge pivot.
And plus your children were how old at the time? 2018, 2019, like 5 years ago.
5 years ago. So Max what is that? He was 9. So 9 and 10.
So you were like
8,
soccer
8,
mom
9, 8.
turned channel.
Yeah.
And
they knew I did healing work, because, I remember years ago, it was probably about 8 years ago now, my girlfriend and her family were coming over for dinner. And this is kind of when I came out of the closet that I actually do energy work, because my clients that I coached, I would do energy work with them. And her daughter, she wasn't herself. And I said, what's going on with Melania? And she said, I don't know. She's had a really bad headache all day, and she just didn't want to be with the boys and her sister playing and stuff. And I said, Melania, come here. So I brought her into my office, and I kind of put her in my arms like a baby. And I just started doing some energy work on her head. And all of a sudden she looks at me with these big eyes, and she's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And then I just continued to do it, and she popped up and she's like, I'm better now. And she went running up the stairs past her mom, and her mom was like, what did you do to her? And I'm like, I just did energy work on her. And so that was really me leaning into the fact that I wasn't just a coach, that I really had a gift of helping people release their energy, and helping people shift into better well-being or abundance or whatever that may be. And so they knew, when they would get boo-boos, or, when they had something going on, I would say, do you want a healing? And they were like, of course, yes. I mean, Maxim had a tournament tonight. He got kicked in the shin and in the foot. And tonight he's like, Mom, will you give me a healing?
oh,
And I'm like, yeah, so it's handy to have as a mom. But yeah,
but I mean, that type of leap of faith, but leaning into it in a way where you don't deny your gifts or feel ashamed of them at all. You just leaned into it with your full truth and unapologetically, and helped. And who can deny that? I mean, yeah, I'm sure that the soccer mom crowd could be a tough one, but when you really offer true help and true healing to someone, who's going to deny that? And yeah, if it is done in the way of truth and light, and something that can actually communicate a message to someone that they need to hear, the truth always comes through. And so how did you deal with that? Was there judgment? Was there people, saying, don't go over there, that mom's crazy, or that person? I mean, did you ever have that, or were you just truly holding yourself? Okay, how did that go?
Well, I mean, there was different levels and layers of it. I remember the first time, because for 17 plus years, every New Year's Eve, I do a New Year's Eve meditation to set the energy for the new year. My community loves it. And it's always amazing, whatever they choose as the essence of their choice for the year, it's always comes to fruition. And so I remember the first time I felt that level of rejection. I had a woman that said, I have a sales team, and I've been telling them that this is the meditation that they need to do, and now all of a sudden you've got a different voice, and you're, being weird, and it reflects badly on me. And I was like, I'm sorry. It's just, this is what I'm guided to do now. Mm-hmm. And so, that was the first time that, wow, this is getting rejected. But at the same time, I saw how other people were shifting and how they were appreciating the wisdom of the council, and how it felt like truth for them. And so, but that was the first time. And then my son Max told me that one of his best friend, who's also on his soccer team, several years ago looked me up online and saw me channeling and was making fun of me and, that sort of thing. And so it's like I just had to brush that off. But the funniest thing is my uncle, who definitely doesn't get channeling or any of that, he always says to me, he's like, when did you get, because they have kind of like a British accent a little bit. Some say African, some say Australian. They have a bit of a Brit to them. And he's like, when did you go study in Britain or something? Like, why all of a sudden do you have this like different accent? So now he calls me Mary Poppins, and so it's just,
But you're letting it roll off of you because you see the change that it's making in other people. And that takes a lot of strength. Thank you. Do you ever ask the council for personal things like that? Like how, my son feels bad about this. How do I, can you help, or anything healing around that? Do you ever ask for personal?
All the time. Yeah, they are just absolute guidance. I mean, we had a thing the other day where Frederick got into a space of lack, and I got knocked off by it because I usually can remain neutral to that. And I realized it, and I got the guidance, to clear my energy and my space. And then I was able to go back to him and say, you're in a place of lack. And he's like, can I talk to the council?
Oh. Oh my goodness. What a household.
Right?
But yours is such a great story because it shows how somebody fearlessly goes after their truth and that dream. And leap of faith is probably the best word for it, because I'm sure you've countered a lot of resilience and so forth, but you had to stick with it because you couldn't do it any other way. And that's a big message to drive home for people, because I know a lot of our audience has heard messages or had encounters, and they really know it to be true. And to defend your message or defend that experience when you talk about it to other people, I'm sure you could offer a lot of advice to people around that, because it wasn't always easy for you, but you couldn't do it any other way, from what I know about you.
Yeah, it would be more painful to not do it because it feels so good to do it. And I think that's, for anybody, as I mentioned, I've been certifying, and I still do certify coaches. I still have that part of my business where, we're certifying coaches. And there are people, I remember even in 2008, 2009, when coaching was still in its infancy, family members or, spouses would be like, what are you doing to, different clients or different students that were coming through the coaching academy? They didn't understand or get the calling that someone had to shift a career into coaching or to invest into a coaching certification, because it's like, well, that seems like a waste of money. But to the person, it was sacred. And, they felt like, no, I've been getting this call. I'm having this guidance. I'm getting this intuition that being a coach is for me. And so, you can get that in any aspect of life where you might feel you need to move somewhere, or you need to change a job, or get out of a marriage, or marry someone that someone else doesn't approve of. But when you're the one that's feeling the rightness of it and the guidance that this is right and this is your path, I mean, who is anybody to say what's right for you? And so, that was the big thing for me, is that it felt so good. It does feel so good. And, it's a lot of fun. And, for me, it was never weird, because my first introduction into, say, spirituality or personal development, my teacher was a channeler. And I remember 28 years ago, she said to me, "You're a channeler."
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
It was like what I said to her. I'm like, okay, I don't even know what that means. And so my teachers were channelers. When, gosh,
Mm.
it's been over 20 years now. When I first was introduced to Esther Hicks, and
Right.
when it was before their book Ask It and Is Given came out, I would go to different seminars of Jerry and Esther Hicks and Abraham, and there would be like 40 people in a room.
Oh, that
And
has definitely changed now. Well, look, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between channeling and intuition and what that means and how someone would know what it means to channel in the first place. So let's take a quick break. We'll be back with Christy Whitman and her amazing story. And you, when we come back, I'm Lisa Garr. You're listening to Coast AM. Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm new here, sorry. And my guest tonight is Christy Whitman, and we're talking about her story of really going through this calling that she was getting, literally voices and messages. And how many of you have been through that, where you've gotten this divine message? Did it scare you? I'm wondering, Christy, if you started hearing these voices and it scared you in any way.
no, it just felt so calming, and it felt so soothing, and it felt truth. And because, like I said, 23-ish years ago, that's when I really started receiving the insight and the information. And every time I followed it, it led to something good. It was usually when I didn't follow it that it would, be painful or something wouldn't work out the way I wanted to. So it's like any relationship, Lisa. The more you trust it, the more you give attention to it, the more time you spend in it, the more there's this space of trust, and you get to come to know it as, real, instead of something that's like, weird, or,
Right.
oh my God, I'm hearing voices. Am I crazy? That kind of thing. So even if I was hearing voices and I would think like, am I nuts here? These voices, they were comforting. They felt good. It felt right. And it always, like when I would follow it, it just always led to something really special.
Now what happens when you didn't? Like, did you just say, this is crazy, this isn't me, this can't be right, I'm going to follow another direction? I mean, did you give in to your own opinion?
Oh, of course. I'm like, I'm not doing that, right? But it just kept nudging and nudging and nudging, and then the one time was really interesting. I was with clients, and back in the day, obviously I had an internet business, but I would do a lot of courses and things like that on instant teleseminar.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of, remember instant teleseminar?
Right.
Instead of Skype or Zoom
Mm-hmm.
now and all that. And so I was in Montreal, Canada, and there was a woman that was in the East Coast, the West Coast. She was in, I think, California. And so I was doing a checkout with her at the end of this session. And she said, all of a sudden I heard these voices telling me, tell her to go to the doctor and get her hips checked. And I'm like, I am not telling her that, right? I was like, no. And so they were like persistent. They're like, tell her. And I'm like, no, shh. I was like, go away. And so I'm trying to work here, right? And I'm trying to talk to her, and I'm like, all right, listen, Barbara, I am getting these very strong messages. I'm very resistant to telling you this because I am not one to just tell someone to run off and go see a doctor, but they're being very persistent that I need to tell you to go see a doctor and get your hips checked. And she's like, why? My hips aren't even bothering me. I'm like, don't kill the messenger.
Yes.
This is just what they're telling me. She went the very next week to the doctor. She ended up having cancer in her hip.
Oh, wow.
Well before physical symptoms happen, and it saved her life.
Wow. That is where you start following it more and more and more. Now, how do you tell me the distinction between these voices and maybe your intuitive guidance or intuition or something that would have come from past experience of yours?
Well, the intuition is really about us opening up to that higher experience of who we are. So, instead of going, well, wait, I didn't do that in the past, or wait, I did that and that didn't work out, like for my own, my own memories or my own programming or my own limitation, that intuition, it feels and it comes from a more expanded place. And so it just feels like a dropping. It's almost like it's beyond knowledge. It's beyond logic. It's beyond reasoning. It comes in as like just a download of just absolute wisdom, where I'm like, I'm just in awe of it. And so that's how I know, it's a different idea, say, than I would have. Even like the way we found this house that we're now living in, we built, couple of years ago. All of a sudden, I heard the council say to me, I wasn't in full channeling mode, but I heard them say, take a drive. And I'm like, okay, where do you want me to drive to? And they said, keep going. And so I was on this road, and then they're like, okay, turn right. And I'm like, this is nuts. So I try and right. I'm going down further and further and further. It's like getting further away from, the area where I live, and most populated area. And then they're like, okay, this road, turn left. This road, turn right. Go all the way to the end. And I go all the way to the end, and there's this development. And I'm like, what is this? I go in, and there's a model home, and I go in, and I see this model home, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the area. I fell in love with the community, and I called my husband up. I'm like, can you come take a drive? It's about 20 minutes away from our house. And he drives up there, and I go, I'm being guided. Let's do it. And he's like, are you nuts? I'm like, I might very well be, but counsel. Counsel's telling me.
How does he handle it? How does Frederick handle it?
He's really open. The first time that when I said that, on September 17th in 2018, when they came through the first time, I showed him the video, and I have that on my YouTube channel and everything. And he was like, what? I mean, he's been with me with Abraham, and he knows, that I've been learning from teachers that were channelers for, most of my adult life. But he was like, that's you, but it's not you. So that was a little weird for him at first, but yet he, like I said, the other day, he's like, can I talk to the council?
Because it's again and again guided you into a place of truth. But it's not just your family that you use this with. It's people that are in transition in life and they need help. Have you found, Christy, that more and more people these days are having crisis like more than before?
Yes. Well, it's interesting because when 2020 happened, right, and the pandemic happened, I was like, counsel, what is the deal? Like, why is this happening? And they said it's an amplification time. And I said, okay, explain more. And they said, well, anything that's already been buzzing under the surface for someone, it's now being amplified because it's time to look at. So when you look at what actually happened, for example, if someone was in a unhappy marriage, or they were unsure, or they were having doubts, or they were thinking about leaving, now they're in lockdown with this person. So it's going to get amplified. And that came up, right? So there was a lot of divorces, a lot of splitting up of people that happened after that period of time. Then you could look at someone that was maybe single and didn't have anybody as someone to live with, right? And now they're in lockdown completely by themselves. So that loneliness and that desire to have maybe a partner or to deepen relationships, that got amplified. For some people, it was, their fear of dying or their fear of not being in good health. For others, it was the fear of money. Oh, my God, I'm not going to make any money. Or, it's like whatever was underneath the surface, everything got amplified. And some, like anything in, any human life, you either accept it and you learn from it and you grow from it, you heal from it, and you move on to a different level of consciousness with it, or you suppress it more. So you could see other people were eating more, and they were drinking more, and they were smoking more, and they were doing more online shopping, or whatever their escape was, they were doing it more. Whereas other people really looked at it as an opportunity to go within and to go deep and to start maybe going to therapy or looking at other modalities like healers or energy work to be able to shift their lives and change things. So it really was a huge split in the sense of many people awakened during that time, and many people went deeper into sleep.
So anything working or not working got amplified.
Yes.
And it's interesting to listen to that because, I could look back, and a lot of people have never even recovered from that time.
Exactly.
And so here we are 3 years later, and it's still a piecing back together. And so much of, I think, what we're experiencing now is because we couldn't deal with it at the time, but we are getting a backlash from, businesses being shut down and industries going away and new industries coming up. I mean, look at the whole COVID testing industry that popped up and then it's gone, went away.
Right.
I mean, things like that came up and then went away. And it's such an interesting experience to look at these last 3 years. I don't think anyone's life is the same after these, in these last, it's like a delineation of before shutdown and after shutdown. So in your experience of the people that you're talking with now, and you started channeling in 2019. So
2018.
2018. Yeah. Okay. So from what you were hearing in 2018 to what you're hearing in 2023, have people's lives or circumstances intensified compared to then?
Yes, but what's interesting is those people that were working with myself and the council, for me, I always had an internet business. And so during that time, people were more like, if they signed up for a program, they showed up, because what else were they going to do? They were distracted. Right. So there was a deepening with people showing up and doing the energy work. And it's amazing because those people that were working with us at the time through Sacred Circle of Light or through meditations or whatever the configuration was, they were getting through it really beautifully. When their stuff came up, they were able to release it instead of suppressing it or going into panic about it. And so it's this light community that, I've created and that has been attracted to this, or that the council's really created, it's amazing because they're shining brighter than most people. And it's really different. It's such a different perspective, and so many people are deepening, and I have people saying to me all the time, this is the happiest I've ever been, or this is the most joyful I've ever been in my life, this is the most empowered I've ever felt, or this is the most connected I've ever felt. And it's because they're doing that work of really mastering their energy. That's one of the first things that the council brought through when we were connecting with each other. It was like grab pen, grab paper, and they started downloading a program, which is really more of an experience than anything, called Quantum Energy Mastery. And the reason for this is they said human beings don't know how to master their energy. They might know that everything is energy, but they don't know how to practically apply it to be able to shift their lives. So like when a pandemic happens, or when a friend betrays them, or a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife leave them, or, there's financial turbulence, or whatever may happen as a human being in our third dimensional world, which, there's contrast that happens all the time. How do you then take that and don't resist it and let go of the resistance if you are resisting it? How do you have that emotional intelligence to be able to manage your emotions and, master your mindset? And so this is one of the first things they brought through, and people's lives are absolutely changed because it's an experience that, as they were saying, human beings need to know how to work with energy because we're in a vibratory universe. And when you understand that, then you understand how to, no matter what's happening in your life, you know how to shift it, change perspective, change your consciousness, shift your words, shift your thoughts and your feelings so that you're actually feeling aligned no matter what the contrast is.
That's very interesting because it's easier said than done sometimes when you have emotional. Well, look, from experience, living life with emotional highs and lows is very difficult. After I've had this concussion, it was about 6 weeks ago, something in the relatability to the concussion has made the emotional highs and lows extreme. And I think if I had to live my whole life like this would be difficult to do. I mean, just crying at the drop of the hat and not being able to regulate emotions. And I know it's directly related to the concussion because I didn't feel this experience before. But I know that if you don't have control of that energy, it's exhausting. It is exhausting. Yeah.
And it absolutely changes your life when you can get back in control of it.
Yes.
It's like someone that is not feeling good in their body, or there's something that's been malfunctioning in their physical body. It's all about the energy. It's all about the stuck emotions. And when you start to release, I've seen this over and over and over again, when you start to release the emotions, then the body gets back into alignment with well-being. I had a woman, it was amazing. She was 54 at the time, and she was about to go in for a full hip replacement. And she worked with the council. Yeah, and she's young. She worked with the council, and she had a lot of trauma in her hips. And so she did an emotional release with them and cleared a lot of that emotion, that stuckness. Literally the next week went back to her doctor as like a pre-op kind of consultation. And the doctor told her, I don't know what you did, but you're no longer a candidate for this surgery. You don't need it. And it's been, 5 years now, and she still is totally perfect and fine and doesn't need to have a hip replacement.
So how do we do that? How do we learn how to master our emotions?
Well, it's interesting because our emotional body is actually our belly. So whenever someone angers us, or, we feel the anger, or we feel sadness, or we feel all that, it's like a hit to the gut, to the belly. And what's supposed to happen, because everything, is energy and emotions are energy, we're supposed to just feel it, be informed by it, let like every single cell in our telomeres and everything just be opening to it, and then we then release it. So it's like a wave. But what happens is we constrict. It's kind of like a turtle that goes inside of its shell. It's like we constrict on that emotion because most of us were taught, don't feel that way, right? Don't be disappointed. Oh, little girls shouldn't be angry. Little boys shouldn't cry, right? So it's a conditioning of I've got to suck it up. I'm in corporate America. I'm a woman. I can't just go cry, right? So we learn how to suppress it. And so we feel something and then we close down around it. And what happens is those become imprints. It's like those are pockets of places within our conscious, subconscious, our physical body, our mind, our emotions. We close down around these pockets of energy.
That's kind of what I feel like I'm doing with maybe that's what the concussion is. It's allowing all that stuff to come out. I'm happy to talk concussion later. We'll do that also with Christy, but we will be right back with another quick break on Coast to Coast AM.